In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Well, this is a picture of the old cosmology, with the earth at the center and the 7 planets of the ancient world, which included the sun and the moon, extending out from the earth. First the moon, then Mercury, then Venus, then the sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And beyond Saturn, the fixed stars. And beyond the fixed stars, absolute stillness, which is where God resides. Now, one of the ideas in the ancient world was that the human soul comes from God, passes through the 7 planetary influences to be born on the earth. And then, as life is lived, those planetary influences are manifested in reverse order. So the biblical creation story can be read as a life cycle in 7 stages. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters. When we hear "in the beginning," as modern objective humans, we think, now when was that? Was that thousands of years ago? Was that millions of years ago? Was that billions of years ago? Was that the Big Bang? But the beginning for each of us comes when we are born. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Light and the awareness of light. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. Perhaps one of the first distinctions that we make soon after birth is the difference between light and dark, awake and asleep. And there was evening and there was morning, one day. And this is at the level of the moon, whose phases embody light and dark. And God made the vault of the sky and separated the waters under the sky from the waters above the sky. Well, this snowflake was made with kind of an egg-shaped universe in each of the points, with raindrops falling towards the center and clouds rising towards the periphery. But this snowflake can also be looked at as a whole. Imagine that you're back in your infancy, lying in your crib, and your eyes have now gained enough focus that space starts opening up for you. So you look at the center of the snowflake and you see the zenith. And all around the periphery, you see the eyes, eyebrows, and cheeks of all your relatives looking in on you. And there was evening, and there was morning, a second day. And this is at the level of the planet Mercury. So here we see a figure with his arms swinging, opening up space. Now, Mercury, in the Roman pantheon of gods, was the messenger. He took messages from the gods in heaven down to earth and then returned to heaven. So this space that has opened up is precisely his space. Now, I do not for a moment think that the ancient Hebrews who wrote the biblical creation story believed in the Roman gods. But being one of the Mediterranean cultures, there may have been similarities in their archetypal ideas for the planets. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together, and let the dry land appear. And let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees yielding fruit." So here we see the waters being gathered together in the center, and an open apple, grain, a fruit tree, and all of this symbolizes the fruitful Mother Earth, food and mother. And there was evening, and there was morning, a third day. And this is at the level of the planet Venus. And here, God's creation has a more feminine, nurturing nature. And God said, "Let there be lights in the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years." So in each of the points we see the sun with the daylight surrounding it, and in between the night sky with the moon and the stars. And the lights of heaven can symbolize aspirations, ideals. We still have the expression, reaching for the stars. And where there are aspirations, it implies that fulfillment is sometime off in the future. So there's a need for the measurement of time. And there was evening, and there was morning, a fourth day. And this is at the level of the sun, whose brilliance embodies all of the lights of heaven. And remember, this is the fourth day, and the number 4 is suggestive of the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, west, and the call out into the world. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the sky." So in the center we see a sea filled with varieties of fish, and in the clouds above, the birds. But isn't this peculiar? A separate day of creation for the fish and the birds? How can that be? Well, again, it goes to the symbolism. The fish are thoughts that are submerged in the sea of the subconscious mind. And the birds are the conscious thoughts, flights of fancy. So this is all about the formation of the mind. So God created the great sea monsters. Oh yes, those scary thoughts that we try to keep hidden, maybe especially from ourselves. God created those too. And this is the first element that is mentioned in the creation of the mind. And God created every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kinds. Well, this isn't so much an illustration of a great variety of fish or thoughts as it is just one being turned over and over in the subconscious mind. Fish in the negative heading towards the center, fish in the positive heading towards the surface. And God created every winged bird according to its kind. Sometimes those subconscious thoughts break the surface of the sea of the subconscious and become conscious thoughts. And here we see clearly a flight of fancy. And what do we do with our flights of fancy? Why, we police them, of course. And off to the side, we see an owl to keep an eye on things. The owl is in the negative. And both the fish and the birds were urged to multiply. So thought begets thought, and the mind expands. And there was evening, and there was morning, a fifth day. And this is at the level of the planet Mars. Now, Mars in the Roman pantheon was the god of war, of course. But I do not believe that this was the archetype for the fifth planet among the Hebrews. I think the archetype was the law. And the law can mean both the rules and the enforcement of the rules. And the Romans were bigger on enforcement. Well, here we see a five-pointed star with a book or text attached to each of the points, symbolizing the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch, the law. And down towards the center, we see a scholar with a mortar board. So this is all about education. And there still needs to be some enforcement, and the scholar is holding 2 pikes. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kinds. So here we see some insects towards the center, reptiles, amphibians, higher forms going towards the periphery. And the whole thing makes like a pulsing of blood. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our own image, after our likeness." Well, starting at the top, we see the human soul coming down, passing through the 7 planetary influences to be born on the earth with outstretched arms. But those outstretched arms also form the eyes of a face with kind of a serpentine mouth, the face of one contemplating making humankind. And in the forehead, there is a 6-pointed star, which is basically an equilateral triangle pointing up, symbolizing male, and an equilateral triangle pointing down, symbolizing female, and together symbolizing the union of the sexes. So God created the human in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. So down towards the center we see the female, because woman is the center from which we all come, both male and female. But these are not the first humans. Remember, you arrived on the very first day when God said, "Let there be light." That was your light. And then, when space opened up, that was your space. And then there was the appreciation of Mother Earth and food and Mother. Your call out into the world, your education. And now we come to maturity, which includes procreation. So what this is saying is that your children are created by God, as are we all. And being made in the image of God, we too are called upon to be creative. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." An explosion of creativity. And God said, "Have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." So here we see birds in the periphery, a strip of water with fish, maybe some crocodilian eyes, many animals, and at the heart, the human with outstretched arms. Now, if the fish and the birds symbolize the mind, what does that make the animals? Well, the animals move on the surface of the earth, and it is our bodies that move. So perhaps they symbolize the body and actions. So this can be interpreted as saying, have dominion in your maturity over your mind and your body and your actions. And God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. As children, our food is simply given to us. But when we grow up, we have to grow our food or work for it. So this is the productive as well as reproductive stage of life. And to every beast of the field and to every bird of the air, everything that has breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. Well, this may simply be instructions about how to care for your domestic animals, but we do have many wild animals also, including a monkey hanging from the periphery. But what about the carnivores? It doesn't say anything about the carnivores, but they're there, off to the side, looking in, very hungry. And there was evening, and there was morning, a sixth day. And this is at the level of the planet Jupiter. And Jupiter, in the Roman pantheon of gods, was the great procreator. But here we see a picture of the planet itself. And again, we see the six-pointed star, which here clearly one can see the two triangles pointing up and down, symbolizing the union of opposites, out of which comes the productive and reproductive life. On the seventh day, God finished his work which he had done, and behold, it was very good. So here we see the face of human life on earth, which encompasses elements from all the days of creation. They continue to be created throughout life. So there's the arc of the sky, the lights of heaven, the birds, the fruitful tree, animals, fish, all joined together. And God rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. And this is at the level of the planet Saturn. And Saturn, in the Roman pantheon, really embodied time. And the Hebrew name for Saturn was Shabbat, the same word that is used for the Sabbath. And as a stage of life, this embodies old age, a time to rest and contemplate the creation of which one has been a part. And so we have come full circle. The human soul comes from God, passes through the 7 planetary influences to be born on the earth, and then those planetary influences are manifested in reverse order throughout life until one returns to God and resides in the stars. Now, few people today believe in the old cosmology and the influence of the planets. But seeing the creation as a continuous process extending through all the days of our lives remains central to the belief in a living God.